Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're going to completely overhaul how you approach learning, memory retention, and studying. Because if you have ever felt like your study sessions are just a massive waste of time, or you're putting in all of these hours without actually seeing the results, you are in the exact right place. We're going to decode the actual literal science of how your brain learns best. So, why do you forget everything you just studied the absolute second you walk into the exam room? We've all been there, right? It's incredibly frustrating. You spend hours staring at your textbooks, but the moment you sit down and look at that paper, your mind goes completely blank. Now, for years, you might have looked at the top students in your class and just kind of assumed they possess some magical study gene that you simply weren't born with. Well, after analyzing over 100 scientific papers on cognitive function and learning, we've discovered a hard truth. Getting top grades, it's not about genetics. It's all about using the right methods. Okay, let's dive into this. We really need to shift our mental model here. Most of us treat our brains like a computer's hard drive. We think that if we just basically copy and paste a textbook chapter into our heads, it's going to stay there permanently. But in reality, our brains function way more like a computer's RAM, random access memory. It's this temporary cache that is constantly, relentlessly clearing out old information to make room for the new. So the real question becomes, how do we effectively write data into that cache so it actually sticks around? Section 1, The Great Illusion, Why Comfortable Habits Fail Us. To answer how we actually fix our studying, we first have to unlearn what we've been taught for years. We need to look at our most popular, comfortable study habits. The methods that create this massive false sense of security while you're sitting at your desk, but completely fail you when the pressure is actually on. I call these the big four passive learning traps: rereading notes, highlighting, summarizing, and copying down notes. I can almost guarantee that over 99% of us use at least one, if not all of these methods right before a test. And why? Well, because they're comfortable. They're fast, they're easy, and they honestly don't require a ton of mental heavy lifting. You feel incredibly productive while you're doing them, but science tells us they are dangerously passive. Take rereading, for example. It is the most common strategy out there. Just scanning over the syllabus or the textbook multiple times, hoping the information somehow magically glues itself to your brain. But studies, like this really pivotal 2009 research paper by Callender, reveal that repeatedly reading material yields practically the exact same test scores as not reading it at all. Crazy, right? It gives you this illusion of competence because you recognize the words on the page, so you mistakenly think you know them. But it offers almost zero real-world value when it actually comes to synthesizing that information during a test. Now, what's really interesting about this is the science on highlighting. You'd think making things bright and colorful helps, right? Well, research actually shows an inverse relationship between highlighting and test scores. Let that sink in. Why? Because most students just don't have the critical reading skills required to know what is actually important on a first pass. So what happens? We end up painting the entire page yellow. According to leading researchers like Professor John Dunlusky in 2013, until students are explicitly taught how to highlight effectively, it just remains a terribly ineffective technique. And then we have note-taking and summarizing. We absolutely all know the feeling of spending an entire semester creating these beautiful, color-coordinated notes on an iPad. It feels like an art project, it feels great, but Harvard research indicates that many of us, teachers included, incorrectly assume this automatically leads to learning. In reality, unless you receive highly specific training on exactly how to accurately summarize and connect complex concepts, these methods just eat up your time and energy. You get these beautiful pages for sure, but an empty memory when exam day actually arrives. Section 2, The Reveal. The ultimate scientifically proven solution. So, if the methods we all rely on are secretly sabotaging our success, what actually works? Get ready, because this is a complete paradigm shift for your academic and professional life. The secret is active recall. In essence, this is the process of actively stimulating your memory to pull information out of your brain, rather than passively trying to push it in. Passive learning is staring at an open textbook. Active learning, that is closing the book entirely and forcing your brain to retrieve the answers from scratch. It's asking yourself, what is the capital of this country? Or what did I literally just read? And forcing your mind to generate that answer. And the science backing this up is undeniable. In that exact same comprehensive 2013 review by Dunlosky, active recall was rated as having exceptionally high utility. What makes this so incredibly powerful is that it's universally effective. It strongly correlates with higher exam scores, regardless of your age, the difficulty of the material, or even the format of the test. The more you practice pulling information out of your head, the higher your test scores are going to be, period. Section 3. The Science of Better Memory. The Karpike 2011 Showdown. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Let's look at a fascinating, pretty dramatic scientific showdown conducted by researcher Jeffrey Karpike in 2011. He took students and divided them into 4 distinct groups to study the exact same material, but using completely different methods. Let's walk through this data, because it is incredibly revealing. Group 1, they read the text just once. Very low effort, poor results. Group 2 read the text 4 times. That is a massive time investment, but their performance was still below average. Group 3 read it and created a mind map. High effort, average results. But Group 4, they read it just once and then used active recall. They put the text away and forced themselves to remember as much as possible. Then, all these groups were tested with verbatim questions and really complex inference questions that required deep logical thinking. The results? The active recall group completely crushed the other groups. What is mind-blowing here is comparing Group 2 and Group 4. Group 2 spent massive amounts of time passively reading the material 4 times, yet they performed significantly worse than Group 4, who read it just once but actively engaged their retrieval memory. So, what is the most actionable takeaway you can implement literally right now? Stop reading your textbook 4 times. Read it once to understand the baseline concepts, and then immediately test yourself. Put all your notes away, hide your books, and try to solve last year's exams strictly from memory. Your brain has to be the absolute only tool you rely on. Section 4. Weightlifting for your brain. All right, we have to address the elephant in the room. If active recall is so undeniably superior, why don't we all just naturally do it? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Because it's difficult. It's mentally exhausting. It requires significantly more mental energy than just lazily sliding a yellow highlighter across a page, right? Think of it exactly like physical fitness. Passive learning is like going to the gym and lifting a tiny 5-pound weight for a whole year. Sure, it's easy. You won't break a sweat. But you also are not going to build any muscle. Active recall, on the other hand, is progressive overload. It is lifting heavier weights to constantly push your limits. Yes, that mental exhaustion you feel when you close the book and force yourself to remember is uncomfortable. But that exhaustion is exactly what you want. That friction is the biological signal that your brain's memory muscle is actually growing and cementing that information. So, I really want to leave you with this challenge. The science is incredibly clear. We know exactly what works, and we definitely know what wastes your time. The next time you sit down to study for a crucial exam or prep for a major presentation, what are you going to choose? Are you going to fall back into the comforting illusion of rereading the page? Or will you drop the highlighter, close the book, and truly test your mind? The choice and your future success is entirely up to you.